Hey, so in this video, I'm gonna do my best to talk about non-duality. And I think the real heart of non-duality is that everything is all a part of one big system. You know, people call it the universe or the world, that sort of thing. But what it really comes down to is the system the system that everything is a part of cannot be explained from within the system. So the words that we use to communicate with each other are never going to be able to explain the one reality that everything is within. And there's really the thing that non-duality does is essentially make it clear that that's the case, because there's a lot of frameworks, you know, a lot of religions, a lot of philosophies and things that kind of act under the assumption that we can describe things, and they act as though, you know, there is God, and God is a thing that, you know, is named God or has some sort of name. But non-duality, it keeps a certain purity to it, because it decides that there's no such thing as like this nameable entity or this sort of final answer that you can come to. And while it makes it very valuable, it makes it um, almost impossible, or essentially, yeah, it makes it impossible to talk about directly, because talking about it directly is like always kind of missing the point of it. If I'm making a cohesive argument out of that, but really the way I'm going to try to talk about it is, instead of trying to talk about non-duality, is to sort of, I guess, like hold non-duality in my kind of like intent to express things, but the actual things I'm going to be talking about can't actually be non-dual, in the sense that, like, just by talking about things, I'm presenting a duality rather than keeping the pure non-duality that I'm trying to speak from. Yeah, so it's really nice. It's I'm taking these videos in nature, and there's always so many like sounds and things to see. I don't know if that's, I think it's a squirrel or a bird or something, but I don't know. Hard to stay focused. Anyway, yeah, I think the main topic of this video will be yeah, essentially just what duality is, because I guess what I've said so far is um, what non-duality is avoiding being, but in a really direct sense, non-duality is essentially defined by duality, and duality um, might not be that meaningful if you haven't heard it used in many contexts. But I think a good way to present it is um, basically in terms of like black and white. Like there's a lot of different fundamental dualities that you can present, but you know, in our like kind of computational culture, uh, like the one and zero black and white type of presentation is the I guess like the most obvious, the most yeah, like the most I guess like the closest to the way people think about things already. But it also is a very simplified and a really like reductive way of seeing things, because you know, like black and white calls to mind um, kind of like good and evil almost, or I guess evil and good. But that's essentially just a certain way of viewing things, and it prevents you from seeing things rationally. I guess it's rational. And I don't think rational is the word I'm thinking of. It's like it prevents you from seeing things um, with a sense of uh, like peacefulness, I guess. Like the good and evil is a certain duality, and it's a duality that is founded on the assumption that there can be good and there can be evil. But if you sort of take a step back and view it in a non-dual sense, you see that that itself, like the good-evil duality, exists within a larger duality. And the larger duality is essentially like peace and war, or power, or like struggle. You see what I'm saying? Like the like good fights against evil and good stands against evil. And the world we live in, there is like struggle to be had, but in a sort of a pure um, mental framework, which is really what I aim to create in these videos. From a pure framework, there is no struggle to be had. If we're all part of the same system, that system doesn't need to struggle with itself. And it's important to realize that, you know, like as biological beings, as beings in this, three-dimensional world, we're capable of struggling against things and struggling within ourselves. But we are also beings within a much larger framework, and a framework that goes essentially goes beyond the duality that we put in place when we start struggling with things, and we start, seeing things in terms of, like one thing acting against another, or one thing acting in opposition to another. And that's really that's like the hardest. I think it's one of the many dualities that we get stuck thinking isn't a duality. Because we say so much about good and so much about evil that we forget that the whole time we're talking about struggle and opposition. Because I think one of the main reasons for this is that peace and cohesion and, like perfect working together is just hard to talk about, because the English language, and I think most languages, are just built in, warring nations and built in environments of struggle. And so there's just fewer words to talk about, peacefulness and, flow and working together. And yeah, inevitably, I think I'm going to, yeah, getting back to what what I am accomplishing. Yeah, here we go. It's trying to talk in terms of, not in terms of struggle and opposition. It's very hard to say what you're going to do in the future, because saying what I'm trying to do or what I'm going to do implies that I'm not already doing the thing that I'm going to do. But yeah, with that in consideration, my goal in these videos is to essentially present a purified way of thinking through, I guess, like doing that thinking myself. Like, I'm not going to sit here with a script that's fully prepared and kind of like set in place and then present it in a video. Because, the thing I'm talking about of struggle versus, cohesive flow, it really is founded on struggle, founded on opposition. At least the way I see it. It's founded on opposition to set things in place and then bring them into the present moment in kind of out of flow of the moment that you're in. Which is essentially what I'd be doing if I, wrote a script and then came here and read the script. And so I'm essentially going to try to do that as little as possible, and essentially just have like the subject of the video put in place, and then the rest would just be kind of what I think to talk about, and kind of what just like comes through my thought process and my um, yeah, I guess my imperfect presence in this perfect moment, if you will. And yeah, as long as my internal workings are free from uh, yeah, free from certain dualities, you could say. Um, trying to keep somewhat with the subject of the video. There's dualities within me that I still haven't identified and I haven't kind of been able to step back from. And I think on some level I'm using these videos as a way of um, kind of just like speaking with those dualities still a part of my being, and then looking back and seeing, how do those actually affect the way that I'm speaking and the way that I'm, generating things to speak about, generating thoughts and, sentences and paragraphs, because these all have, they have my personal dualities as a part of them. And so that, yeah, that really, I hope this gives some introduction to what non-duality, I guess, to what non-duality is. Um, hmm, how non-duality is presented in a environment that is uh, has so much duality in it that there's like what's the way to summarize what I'm saying is like um yeah, it's like we live in a world full of dominoes, and non-duality is like a way of pushing over one of the dominoes and seeing what results from that, because most of the dominoes aren't really lined up, and they're kind of just like scattered about. Like there's this duality here and this duality here. Like I think this thing is tall and this thing is short, and I think this thing is white and black, and then the other thing is uh, another duality, good and bad, whatever. And it's like these are all kind of separate dualities that exist in the world around me, and through the use of non-duality, I can sort of knock over some of those dominoes and see, that thing that was black and that thing that was white are actually a part of the same system. And it's like when you do that within yourself, with certain things that you have as like persistent dualities, you can essentially like knock over the dominoes and then speak, allow your speech to be what happens as a result of that. So like if I tend to think in terms of good and bad a lot of times, which I think everybody does almost, unless you've moved past it completely. And because of that, I can talk about good and bad with non-duality in mind, and when I do that, things will result from that speech that reveal the things that I think are good and the things that I think are bad. But the action of doing that and the action of like being open and honest about that essentially removes those things from like the entirety of my being. Because if you've never acted outside of those things, they are sort of above you, and you become they become like a fundamental part of you rather than being just a part of you that can be accessed. And through acting in a way that is temporarily not accessing them, you essentially rise above whatever duality it is. And yeah, just move to something that is more in line with the non-dual way of viewing things. And yeah, pretty much it. Hmm, yeah. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed me talking about this stuff. I think these videos will. I think they'll get a little bit easier when I get comfortable, especially like viewing like the audience that I'm talking to as like a almost as like a person or like a group. Because as it stands, I don't think I'm getting many views on these videos, and I expect I eventually will. I don't think it's it's not something I know how to like market or anything, but I think in time I'll feel more comfortable pretending I'm talking to people because I'll actually will be uh, there'll be like a comment section and stuff like that. But I think in the moment I want to pretend somewhat that that I'm like saying hello and saying goodbye, I guess, to a community. Because yeah, I had a thought that I would just I could just make these videos from like a pure like just like start talking and then stop talking and stop the record button. But I think I do want to have this be like I'm presenting myself as a person and as a social entity for the YouTube whatever YouTube audience there is. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm liking the way the sun is gradually moving, so my face is like my face is becoming dual. But yeah, I guess that's a good time to end the video then. Peace.